It was spring break, which meant it was time for me to pack my bags and go over to spend time with my dad. Unlike every year when he took me on a vacation for a week and dropped me back at my mom's place, this time I was going to be staying with him and his girlfriend Stella at the new house he had just bought, as I was now part of the soccer team at school. My parents had separated when I was 8. My mom had caught my dad cheating multiple times and had finally given up and divorced him, leaving me in a shared custody of both of them. It consisted a lot of packing and a lot of moving throughout the year, but now that I'd grown accustomed to it, I didn't know life existed any other way. As we sat in the car, my dad was telling me about my half-brother, Henry, who was 13, about 4 years younger to me. But my dad insisted that he had grown up way beyond his age and we would get along great. I had my doubts being friends with a 13-year-old, but I didn't want to voice out my opinions. We reached the 2-story home he had bought with a garden and a swimming pool. I walked up to Henry's room, which I'd be sharing with him, as despite the fact that the house had various guest rooms, my dad wanted us to get along. "Hey, Ben!" There were 2 single beds in the room and Henry was sitting cross-legged on one of them with an anime in his hand. "Hi, nice book." He smiled. "You read? Anime? Yes." He dived deep into his books as I unpacked in the silence that I preferred. Perhaps my dad was right. Henry didn't really behave like usual 13-year-old kids. We heard Stella call out to us from the living room for dinner. He pursed his lips, glancing at me as he put his book beside him on the bed. We both came down together, which seemed to have pleased my dad. "I knew you both would get along perfectly. We just met." I grinned at him as we ate our meal. When we went up after dinner, Henry and I chatted a bit about anime and soccer before we were too sleepy to keep talking. In the morning, Dad had arranged for a small hiking trip with both of us. Dad got tired before we had climbed up to the top of the hill, so he sat down and told me to take responsibility for Henry and climb on. On the way up and down, I found out that Henry was very similar to me, and surprisingly, we got along very well. Soon enough, we were inseparable. Just as Dad wanted and predicted, we enjoyed each other's company and became close friends. I felt that Henry was family, so it was easy for me to confide in him about anything, and as luck would have it, he was a great listener. Unfortunately for Stella and Dad, since we had both made an alliance, mischief in the house had doubled. We went swimming late at night, which made Dad leave his precious bed to ask us to go back to our beds. We stole the TV remote when Dad wanted to watch a badminton match so we could stay on the channel for the soccer match. The list was unending. On one such occasion, when Dad told us that we would be getting up early for a morning jog with him, we decided to mess up the alarm on his phone. Henry had memorized his password, and we slipped into the master bedroom to look for his phone while he and Stella were setting up for dinner. As we had hoped, we found the phone on the bedside table plugged in for charging. Henry quickly typed in the password and gave the phone to me. I changed his alarm for 5:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m., and as I was confirming it, a message popped up with a loud notification sound. In an attempt to close the phone, we accidentally opened the message. It was from a girl called Gianna, who was spamming Dad continuously. Out of our curiosity, we scrolled up and saw a picture of an ultrasound. Our eyes widened as we read the texts. The girl was pregnant, and she claimed that our father was the baby's father as well. There were various texts begging him to meet her or discuss it. There was a lot of information he had sent her about various abortion clinics. He kept telling her that he doesn't want a baby and doesn't want anything to do with her either. There were a lot of profanities the girl had used for him in their arguments. We heard footsteps on the stairs and closed the phone, plugging it into charge and keeping it back on the bedside exactly how we had found it. Stella opened the door and seemed surprised to see us. "We were looking for you. Didn't you know I was in the living room? We thought you came back up. We heard the water in the washroom. You had left one of the taps open. We just closed it." "Oh, really? That's absurd. What is it that you wanted?" "Oh, just for some snacks." "Snacks? You just had dinner." "I was hungry." "Both of you? Off to bed." We quickly rushed out of the room and heaved a sigh. Henry suddenly looked very gloomy. I knew how he was feeling as I had suffered similarly. I put a hand on his shoulder to reassure him. "We will find out more tomorrow." He nodded his head, and we both went to our bedroom to sleep. The next morning, I woke up and saw that Henry was already gone. I went down for breakfast and only saw Stella and Dad seated at the table. Seeing me, they asked me to join them. I told them I'd be eating with Henry and excused myself. I went to check in the master bedroom, and there he was. He told me he had come back to collect some proof and had sent screenshots of the conversation to me on my phone. I simply nodded until I realized that my phone was downstairs on the table. I had left it when I came up to look for Henry. We ran out of the bedroom, but it was too late, as we saw Dad put the phone down at the table, staring right at us. He didn't say a word as we both ate. After our breakfast, Dad suddenly announced that he would be taking me home today. When I protested, he said that I had been causing too much nuisance with Henry and had also spoiled him. Stella seemed to agree with him, as she just looked down, nodding away silently. Henry tried to interrupt, but Dad told us that his decision was final. On the way home, Dad gave me a long lecture on privacy and how its invasion can be harmful to everyone involved until the car finally came to a stop outside my mom's house. "I expect you to understand what I talked about. Don't step over your boundaries and involve yourself in things that don't concern you. Also, step away from Henry as far as you can get." I nodded and got down from the car. At night, Henry gave me a call. He was deeply disturbed after seeing those texts and wanted to probe into them, and so did I. So I decided to text the girl, Gianna, myself. I introduced myself honestly and told her that I wanted to help her if she was actually telling the truth. Surprisingly, she replied back, saying that she can come meet me and prove that everything she has been texting my dad is nothing but the truth. The next day, I left my house with an excuse that I need to buy some chips. I met her at the grocery store, and then she walked me into the park, narrating everything that had happened with her. Gianna told me that she had been in a relationship with Dad for the past few months. She was unaware of the fact that he was married and had kids, but when she got pregnant and announced the news to him, he told her the truth and threatened her to stay away. She showed me some of their pictures and the hospital documents. I called Henry and told him what had happened. We made a plan to invite Gianna over to Dad's house the next day. With Stella there, he would have nowhere to run and would have to accept everything. The next morning, I met Gianna at the grocery store again, and we drove in her car to Dad's house. I rang the bell while Gianna stood out of the view on the side. Naturally, Stella opened the door, seeing me on the security camera. I asked Gianna to come forward and told Stella that there was something important I had to discuss with Dad. Stella let us in the house reluctantly. On seeing us enter, Dad stood up suddenly and spilled some of his hot coffee on his jeans. What are you doing here?" Gianna handed the papers to Stella and announced that she's pregnant and my dad is the biological father of her baby. Dad tried to snatch the documents from Stella, and in turn he tore the envelope, and various pictures of Dad and Gianna floated in the sky, landing on the floor. Stella took the documents back from Dad and flipped through the various hospital documents. Henry stood near the staircase, watching the whole incident unfurl. We saw Stella's face turn pale, and with tears in her eyes, she raised her hand and slapped Dad while he just stood there between the two women he was cheating. Stella and Henry moved out of the house and settled in a society neighboring ours. Gianna filed a case against Dad for refusing to help her with pregnancy and the baby, while all of us cut out ties with him. Although it was hard for me and Henry to decide to live the rest of our lives without our father, we decided that we didn't want to associate with such a man and disrespect women around us or our mothers. With their shared pain, my mom and Stella became friends and helped each other out, while I and Henry firmly believed that we were truly brothers.